Another great feature of the Presstimator is the customizable request a quote web form. And what this allows you to do is create a web form totally outside of the Presstimator, and that allows potential customers or internal sales staff to enter job specs in their browser and submit that information to the estimator who's trained in the Presstimator to create a new quote. So instead of training sales staff on the Presstimator and having them come in and create a new quote within the Presstimator, instead what you can do is create a web form and make that available to them to enter job specs outside of the Presstimator. In this case, I'm going to toggle over to the website, to a browser, in this case Internet Explorer. And right now I have it on our request a quote web form on our Presstimator website, so you can see some information. And here we also have a sample web form so you can see how this works. But I wanted to actually walk you through it and show you the specifics and how it works. In this case, I have another tab here, and this tab is the request a quote. Now this is just straight HTML, and what that allows you to do is you are completely in control of customizing this to however you want to do it. And as I mentioned, you can have multiple versions of this web form. You can have one for your internal sales staff that's in charge of one type of printing, and another version for internal sales staff which is in charge of another type. And you can even put this out on your website and create this page on your current website and have potential clients actually come to your website, fill out the information, and submit it to your estimator in the form of job specs. Now in this case, I'm just going to fill out some basic information here so I can submit this. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to fill out some basic job information. And as I continue through, you'll see how the drop downs are customizable by you to just deal with the types of printing you do with your shop or the types of paper you deal with your shop. So you don't have to go through a large list of items, and that's what also you can make it customizable for one salesperson versus another one on what choices and selected fields that they have. So in this case, I'm going to create a tab. I'm going to say I want to be 25,000 copies, 12-page tab. Product size is going to be 11 by 16. And in the paper, in this case, in this web form, I've determined that the only three types of paper I deal with in my shop are newsprint, high bright, and offset. And in this case, I want it to be on a 30-pound white newsprint. But I can also create customizable fields here if you're capable of doing multiple stocks in a section. In this case, I wanted to create a wrap on section 1, and that wrap is actually going to be a type of offset, and it's going to be 50-pound white offset, and those 4 pages are going to be a cover around section 1. So you can see it, not only can I enter very basic information, but I can also start creating some pretty complex quotes through the web form. And in the rest of the case, a lot of this information is already defaulted for me, again based on how you customize your own web form. And I can just select from the information that's given and say what type of prepress is required. Do you want any proofing? I want it packaged on skids. I want to stitch and trim, and I want it to be delivered. So now what happens is when I submit this information, it is going to be wrapped up in the form of an email and sent to a specified email address, again, that you can customize, and it will be wrapped up and sent to them so they can import it directly into the Presstimator. Another thing here is that you can add error checking in here. So if a potential customer said that they wanted a 13-page tab, there's error checking here that would actually stop them and say that that is an incorrect value to be entered here, and they would have to fix it in order for it to be submitted. So once the estimator receives a quote in his email, he knows not only is it valid information, but also because it goes through your regular email server, it is filtered out for spam and other filters as well to make sure that the email that he's getting is safe. So let's say we submit this request for a quote. It gets submitted and sent in the form of an email. So what happens is, back in the Presstimator, the estimator would receive an email and say, here's a request for a quote. And so now, instead of saying new quote as the estimator, instead of saying new quote and retyping in all those job specs, what you can do instead is you can say new quote from a web form. And this allows you to import that information directly from that email. In this case, I created a dummy email, but this is exactly what it would look like. It has all that information that was entered on the web form and submitted to them as form of text right in their email. So if I just select all this information, let me just select all and do a copy, and then I go back to the Presstimator and I say File, New Quote from Web Form, and then I paste that information in here. You can see all that information that was entered on the web form is just pasted into this form, and just say OK. Now what happens is that information that I just entered on that online form is now submitted as the specs for the job. So the estimator does not have to rekey in any information. They can see the information that was entered directly here. They can say, give me a new quote number here. And as they go in the specs, look at all these specs that they entered online as a potential customer or sales staff is now filled out within this quote. And right from there, you can actually say load all my defaults and use my default paper waste and all the other settings that I have in shop settings, and click apply, and instantly I can have a quote based off of what the customer entered on that web form and submitted, and I have a quote that quickly based on what was entered on that job on that web form. Now of course you can also go through, and as the estimator can now go through and make some specific choices and come up with a detailed quote. But the biggest thing here was to make sure that you didn't have to rekey information in. You knew that the information that you were getting in as the estimator was valid information to start off with, so you can generate an accurate quote right away based on that information that was entered, and you have it quickly submitted to you. And so the turnaround time can be very quick from someone who submits the web form into the Presstimator. You import it, create a quote, and generate that information, and you're ready to print the reports and send that information out immediately. But as you can see, if I go through the quote, you can see how the half fold that was entered on that web form is submitted. The paper that we had entered, you can see how we have 8 pages of that white newsprint, that 30-pound white newsprint, but you can also see how we had that 50-pound white offset as our wrap on section 1, and you can even see we have notes down here as well of what was submitted online. So even the notes from the web form get submitted in case you need any additional information. And you can see even going all the way through, we said on the web form that it was going to be stacked on skids. So once the job specs are populated, and then you just say load your defaults based on your shop settings, you can quickly get a quote in the Presstimator.